Hezbollah vows revenge as funerals are held for fighters killed in an Israeli airstrike in Syria. It's reviving simmering tensions from the 2006 war. But can the rivals afford a return to hostilities? Do they have more pressing priorities? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Shiulie Ghosh. Funerals have been taking place for 6 Hezbollah fighters who were killed in an Israeli airstrike in Syria. Iran has confirmed that a general with its Revolutionary Guard was also killed in that attack. Israeli security sources haven't confirmed who they hit, but said their targets were planning an attack on Israel. The dead also included the son of a top Hezbollah commander who himself was killed in a 2008 attack blamed on Israel. These are the latest fatalities to hit the Lebanese Shia armed group, which has grown from a domestic resistance movement to a fighting force in Syria. Since 2013, Hezbollah has been supporting President Bashar al-Assad and is widely credited with the gains made by the Syrian army in the past year. But its growing strength and influence has worried regional enemies, especially Israel. On Thursday, 3 days before the latest Israeli airstrike, Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, warned he had missiles capable of hitting any part of Israel and that he was ready to fight a new war.
If the
Israelis think that the resistance is weakened or exhausted, or that its capabilities and readiness have been compromised, they're completely deluded, and will find that out if they decide to build on these ideas. It will be a foolish act, not just a mistake.
Well, we've been getting reaction to this latest Israeli attack in Jerusalem and also Beirut.
Hundreds of people, possibly a couple of thousand, have turned out for the funeral of Jihad Mukhniya. Now, he was a rising star inside Hezbollah, somebody who was being groomed for a more senior position. He's also important because of who his father was. His father had been a senior commander in the group, and he was assassinated in Syria in 2008. Now, this attack on Sunday on Hezbollah inside Syria is significant because it's the first time that the group has been targeted in this way. Previous Israeli attacks have largely focused on weapon stores and weapon convoys. The real question, though, here in Lebanon is how will Hezbollah react and when will they react? What sort of retaliatory action will they take against Israel for this? Now, most people say that they expect some kind of reaction, but perhaps something that isn't large enough to cause a war, because at the moment Hezbollah is deeply mired in the war in Syria, fighting on the side of Syria's President Bashar al-Assad.
Well, the Israeli government and army have declined to publicly comment on reports accusing Israel of carrying out attacks in Al-Quneitra in Syria on Sunday, describing them as foreign reports that they don't respond to. However, some Israeli media outlets quoted an unnamed security source as confirming that Israel has indeed carried out these attacks, targeting a Hezbollah cell in Syria that was plotting to launch attacks against Israel. These claims were further backed by Western intelligence sources, which said that Jihad Mukhniya was heading a unit that was plotting to launch rockets into Israel and send terror operatives into Israeli territory. Now, this would be the 7th time that Israel is accused of carrying out attacks inside Syria since the war there began around 4 years ago. The most recent attack was last December when Syria accused Israel of carrying out airstrikes just outside Damascus and close to the international airport. Hezbollah as well has claimed responsibility for an attack in October last year with a roadside bomb that targeted an Israeli army convoy on the Israeli-Lebanese border, injuring 2 Israeli soldiers. Now, it doesn't look like Israel and Hezbollah are interested in an imminent escalation, but these kind of attacks could drag both sides into further violence.
Well, a lot to talk about. Let's bring in our guests in Beirut. Elias, Hanna, a military and security analyst and retired Lebanese army general. Joining us from Jerusalem is Michael Stevens, head of the Royal United Services Institute here in Qatar and a specialist on Gulf security. Also in Beirut, Nicholas Snow, co-founder of MideastWire.com and author of the book Voice of Hezbollah, The Statements of Syed Hassan Nasrallah. Gentlemen, welcome to the programme. Elias, let me start with you. Give us a flavour of the reaction to this in Lebanon. Only a few days ago, Hassan Nasrallah was talking about retaliating against Israeli airstrikes, and now, a few days later, it appears that Israel has done just that.
I think that, you know, we have to talk. I mean, this incident is like a continuation of a big struggle and war and conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, especially in Syria today, when we have in Lebanon a very quiet front, the southern of Lebanon, by the UNIFIL as well as by, Hezbollah. And now we have the Golan Heights for the first time in its history. It's like, you know, the hot spot. However, the timing is very critical, as you have mentioned, that after 2 days, 3 days, when Syed Hassan Nasrallah said that we will retaliate if Israel attacks Syria. Now, Israel attacked Syria or the Syrian soil and killing like 5 operatives, 5 commanders.
Well, this looked like it was a specific attack against Hezbollah, because previously Israel has largely tended to focus on weapons and arms depots. So is this a change in strategy for Israel?
No, I mean, Israel is focusing on many things. One, the targeted killings for, you know, the high operatives, the structure, the nodes, the military hierarchy of Hezbollah, which is very important. In 2008, we remember the assassination of Imad Mughniyi, and on the other hand, denying any changing, any weapon that might really change the system, the game, the balance of power in Lebanon. Here comes the problem of, here comes the raids against some, weapons, advanced weapons that coming from Syria. So this like taboos, but now when you have like this opportunity that comes to Israel that is really able to kill 5 top commanders of Hezbollah, she has to go by, and killing them.
Okay. Nicholas, you've written extensively about Hassan Nasrallah. You've written about his statements. That was quite a statement he made on Thursday, wasn't it? Threatening to respond to Israeli airstrikes and saying that he had weapons that could reach any part of Israel.
Well, actually, his interview with Mayadeen Television was not so far out of the ordinary in those senses. Many of those statements have been said by Syed Nasrallah, by others in the Hezbollah leadership, or through anonymous sources close to Hezbollah over the last year, 2, 3, 4 years of this conflict in Syria, and before that as well. So that wasn't particularly different. It was a stark warning. It was a message of deterrence to the Israelis, surely, but it wasn't out of the ordinary. Indeed, Syed Nasrallah, about 6 months ago or so, had said on the occasion of one of the Israeli attacks along the border that included territory in Lebanon, had made similar comments. What was new and what was interesting was actually something that was somewhat overlooked, but which is now kind of, let's say, becoming a part of the analysis as the events this weekend have unfolded, which is Syed Nasrallah also made some pretty extensive remarks about the need for a political solution in Syria. And he made some remarks about the presidency and about President Bashar Assad and about the idea that President Assad may have to transition at a certain point. There may have to be elections, there may be power sharing, etc. Comments that we haven't really seen in such detail by the leader of Hezbollah, which to many of us on the ground here signal that Hezbollah is entering a new phase vis-a-vis the Syria conflict, where they are trying to relax the situation to get a political settlement, one that might go in line with, for example, the UN envoy's work there as of late. That was exceedingly interesting. The Israeli attack in the Golan this weekend all of a sudden derails that whole train of thought and that stream of thinking, and leads us to a new heated-up situation where the prospects of conflict, rather than conflict mitigation and a peace process for this Syria crisis, suddenly conflict seems much more in the offing.
Yeah, those are really interesting points, and we are going to talk about Hezbollah's increased presence inside Syria and just how crucial Hezbollah's presence has been for the Syrian army. Just before we talk about that, quick question well, first to Nicholas, and then I'm going to bring Michael in. Is Hezbollah going to retaliate to this latest Israeli airstrike, do you think?
all of us who watch this and analyze this over the years, probably I think we'll all say the same thing, which is there's a long history of this conflict. There have been, at various moments where there's been isolated attacks like this, retribution attacks, both on the Israeli side and the Hezbollah side. It's likely that there will be some kind of retaliation. It's likely, given the history, that it will be a measured retaliation. But the problem is that even if we have the likelihood of a retaliation in this specific example, which I do think is more likely than it has been in the past, but one should remember that Hezbollah did retaliate a few months ago, in fact, and has also threatened on several occasions that the Golan area would be a kind of new theater of this balance of terror and the rules of the game. This time it seems very likely, unfortunately. The problem is that the whole region, and especially the Syria zone, is open to so many terrible contingencies on top of a horrible 3 or 4 years of conflict that it's exceedingly dangerous, because the actors on both sides, the prospects of them making mistakes or miscalculating and leading to a much larger conflagration have increased even in the last few months. And that's what I'm especially concerned with in this coming period.
Okay.
Will there be a retaliation? It seems likely.
Do you agree with that, Michael? I mean, is Lebanon likely to open up another front while its fighters are bogged down in Syria?
I think the Hezbollah have a number of options at their disposal. But let's not forget that there is a possibility that they could organize an attack, perhaps abroad in Europe, against a Jewish target, a synagogue, something like that. Although given the events of the Charlie Hebdo massacre, it might be a bit more difficult to do that, given the sort of increased state of awareness. But of course, there's tit-for-tat escalation that's been going on in that border since the 80s. I mean, I don't expect that there's going to be an all-out war. Certainly nobody here in Israel is talking about the possibility of an all-out war between Hezbollah and the Israelis. But there is a sort of heightened state of alert. It was front and center of the news all of last night. There were many generals brought on to comment on it. I think the Israelis are tacitly admitting, yes, they did strike the Hezbollah. Yes, they did kill Jihad al-Mughniya. They just don't want to go into too much detail. And if they have to escalate, they will. But bear in mind, from the Israeli point of view, their security comes first. The Syrian war is secondary to that priority. So from their point of view, if they have to get into this, they will, but they will avoid it if they possibly can.
OK, let's just have a look at the background to this. As we heard earlier, Hezbollah has blamed Israel for a number of attacks in Syria. Since 2013, the Israeli army is thought to have struck around 7 times, though it rarely takes credit for such attacks. The airstrikes are generally intended to destroy weapons shipments destined for Hezbollah fighters. And Syria, of course, an important transit point for Iranian weapons being delivered to the Shia armed group, which is, of course, as we know, based in Lebanon. Elias, this is one of the reasons, isn't it, that Hezbollah has become so involved in Syria. Syria is important because of its support from Bashar al-Assad for Hezbollah and because it is being used as a transit point for support from Iran.
I think that Syria is important for Hezbollah because, you know, the game is very big. The geopolitical game in the region is highly important. And now I don't think that Hezbollah needs Syria as it did, you know, like 2 years, 4 years, 5 years ago. Hezbollah today is like major regional player. Moreover, the importance of Syria and the regime for the big game, geopolitical game in the region is highly important for Iran. And now we come, and I mean, for the first time in the history of the relationship between Lebanon and Syria, that Lebanon is not anymore the soft belly of Syria. On the opposite, it's like really rescuing the regime in Syria. Now you were talking about where to attack, you know, and there is like a lot of possibilities and a lot of constraints for Hezbollah. Hezbollah has to retaliate because, you know, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah has a high degree of credibility vis-a-vis his, population, Lebanon, and for Israel, for the deterrence purposes. There is 3 theaters, you know, internationally it's a little bit lot of constraints and you need the okay of Iran, and everybody knows what's happening in France and, you know, this anti-terrorism campaign in the world. Regionally, I mean, internally in Lebanon, Hezbollah is constrained because he cannot go and change the game, because when he wants to retaliate, I mean, the retaliation has to be at the level of the losses that were, you know, in Golan Heights.
Do you think the perception of Hezbollah within Lebanon has changed because it is taking an active part in Syria. It's certainly raised sectarian tensions in Lebanon, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. For sure, because Hezbollah is really investing a lot of efforts and man and skills and weapon in Syria, and politically maybe he's, investing a lot of it. Now, where to retaliate? I guess this is my own opinion. I mean, the only fertile ground was gonna be in, and then Israel, inside Israel, he has the operatives, he has the logistics, the capability to prepare, and there is a lot, rich environment of highly important target within Israel. So is it today, tomorrow? I think that maybe revenge is like a plate that prefer to be served cold. Maybe not now, maybe
okay.
later.
Well, look, leaving aside the question of retaliation against Israel, let's talk about whether Hezbollah itself as a group has changed because of its involvement in Syria. Michael, Hezbollah has proved critical for a number of key victories for Assad's regime. Has it, as an organisation, changed? Well, it's clearly changed from a resistance movement to a fighting force which has gone over the border. For the first time, it's fighting outside the Lebanese borders. Has that changed this armed group, its very nature?
I think in terms of the political dynamics inside Lebanon, probably less so than their geostrategic value. I think they've become definitely a better trained army. They are worryingly good at street-to-street fighting. They have been instrumental in certain battles around the borders between Syria and Lebanon. They have been clearly more a scalpel than a hammer when it comes to dealing with problems inside Syria. They are used at certain intervals to make a strategic difference. They are not the be-all and end-all of Bashar al-Assad's power. They are able to intervene in some places, but not in others. And clearly that's how they look to operate. And I think from the Israeli point of view, from what I see, there's clearly a worry here that their battle readiness has shot up, that they would be better in any type of conflict that is to come. So I think they have changed a little bit, but of course, as an organization, they've been improving year on year ever since really the what was called the Second Lebanon War in 2006. So I think the concern has risen, but at the same time, they are bogged down in other strategic questions. And as a result, I think that will not be a priority for Israel in terms of getting into a fight with them. But of course, the concern is raising.
Let me read you a quote from a Hezbollah fighter. This is a fighter inside Syria, and this was quoted in a report released last year by the US-based Institute for the Study of War. So the Hezbollah fighter said, when we first started helping the Syrians, it was true. They had big problems with their army. They had no skill, no discipline. Now the men are very serious fighters. They've become more like Hezbollah. Nicholas, this fighter at least seems to be crediting Hezbollah with giving the Syrian army a bit of a makeover.
Well, look, the first thing that I would say in regard to that report and the literally hundreds of reports, publications, daily items in the news that purport to interview Hezbollah fighters, Hezbollah officials, people close to Hezbollah, security sources that know guys that know Hezbollah, we have to be very, very careful about how we understand, think, and then make policy suggestions based on Hezbollah and its internal workings. It's an extraordinarily secretive organization. It's very good at that. And over the years, they've proved that, there are some things there are a lot of things that we think we know about them that we in fact don't know about them. So I would really urge caution in referring to these kinds of published reports.
Well,
that
one
said,
of these published
something that we
reports
can
is saying that that this experience in Syria has made them a battle-hardened group. They are bigger. They are a much more lethal fighting force than they used to be. What do you say to those claims?
That seems likely, but quoting Abu Ali or someone else, that doesn't make a fact. Okay, it seems likely. It's true. Let's talk about what we do know. We do know that Hezbollah's relationship, as a result of its involvement in Syria, Hezbollah's relationship with external powers like the US and the European Union has fundamentally changed. Right now, in Lebanon, what you have is an unprecedented degree of security symbiosis between Hezbollah, Western intelligence agencies, and the local Lebanese intelligence agencies and army. That is an unprecedented overturning of the more than 30 years of kind of just under the surface intelligence warfare and sometimes outright warfare between Hezbollah and some of these great power actors. As it stands right now, you have intelligence sharing that is saving lives, saving Shia lives and Lebanese lives here in Lebanon. And you have Hezbollah fighting along the border and in Syria in a way with the same aim of trying to, according to them and according to some of their partners on the other side in government, try and prevent Daesh and Nusra Front and others from infiltrating Lebanon and blowing up the situation here. There is a mutually symbiotic relationship that is unprecedented. That's something that we do know is going on.
Hasn't Hezbollah's involvement in Syria, Elias was saying that it's actually made things more difficult in Lebanon, that it's increased sectarian tensions, that we have seen increasing Sunni activity against areas in Lebanon because they're angry at Hezbollah apparently changing its remit, no longer being this resistance force against Israel in Lebanon and crossing the border to fight as a regular army.
Absolutely, and I don't discount that argument. All I'm saying is we can have a chicken and egg discussion about who started what first and who made it bad and who brought in Daesh and Nusra and all this attention and attacks to Lebanon. Setting that question aside, the fundamental reality on the ground is that you have the U.S., you have European states, and you have Lebanese security agencies coordinating closely, including indirectly with Hezbollah and sometimes directly on the Lebanese side, to try and strengthen this country from the deluge that is just at its border and sometimes within its border. And there is a common cause. That's why, as you probably know right now, actually the Shia-Hezbollah movement is in a coalition government with the leading Sunni party, the Future Movement. And indeed, it's the Future Movement hawks that are in charge of the security file. They are right now dialoguing right near here to try and strengthen this security cooperation. So, although we can talk about what popular opinion may be, the reality on the ground is that at the highest level there's good cooperation.
Elias wants to respond to that. So first of all, this idea that Lebanon are strengthening security.
The symbiotic relationship between Hezbollah and the army has been forever. In 1993, we used to cooperate, and still, until today, there is a cooperation.
Well, what about this idea that Hezbollah are cooperating with Sunni parties?
Wait. I mean, the only issue, the main turning point was after the assassination of Prime Minister Hariri. It changed everything. The army is still cooperating with Hezbollah for, security reasons, and the Sunni were put aside. The major shift in the regional issue was the changing of the policy making, the strategic shift of Saudi Arabia, when really Saudi Arabia issued the list of the terrorist organization and started to help. And here comes the consequences on the Lebanese scene, the change of the government, the Interior Ministry, Nuhad al-Mashnu, really fighting the terrorists, and then the Minister of Justice, Rifi. So here comes the relationship that, the change of the Sunni, but still the Sunni needs Hezbollah to get out of, the Syria. So that's why this is the main issue. Two things: the assassination of former Prime Minister Rafi al-Hariri, and then the major shift in the Saudi Arabia geopolitical shift of who is the terrorist and fighting who, and then maybe try to change everything on the Lebanese scene. Here, in Lebanon, so that's why you are seeing this major shift in the political cooperation and this coalition government.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, but that's been a very fascinating discussion. Thank you both very much indeed for being with me. My guests, Elias, Hanna and Nicholas No in Beirut, and of course Michael Stevens, who did join us a little earlier on from Jerusalem. And that's it for this show. Do let us know your thoughts about both this edition or any other. Go to our website, aljazeera.com, or you can also post your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. Or, of course, you can contact us on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. I'm Shiulie Ghosh. From me and all the team here, thanks for watching. Bye for now.